Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to review the Kapauku Papuans of West New Guinea by Leopold Pospisil, which I am probably butchering because the name is Czech. This is part of the Case Studies in Cultural Anthropology, which was an entire series of books that dealt with different cultures of the world, including some of the Native American cultures here in the United States. And the observant of you may have noticed that the two gentlemen on the cover of this are wearing penis sheaths, these white objects right there. And that's pretty much all they're wearing. They don't wear a lot of clothes, at least the men don't. And the women of this culture wear not much more, a small loincloth or skirt, and that's it. This book deals with all aspects of the Papuan society, the culture. It deals with their history, with their religion, it deals with their relationships, it deals with how they conduct war, and of course their economy. And one of the things I found most fascinating about this book is that the economy was the most important aspect discussed. It is the most important aspect in the entire Kapauku society. For the Kapauku are almost entirely individualistic capitalists. They don't even have a definition for the word gift. For a Kapauku, gift pretty much means long-term loan, which could mean until the person that gave me this thing dies. And then you owe their family a payment in return for whatever it is that their now deceased family member gave you. And debts are transferable. So if you owe a man something and he dies, you now owe his son this thing. And while it is a hardcore capitalistic structure, it does have certain aspects that fall outside of how we view pure capitalism, if there is such a thing in the real world. For example, the monetary system is pretty much all shells. And some people are going to say, oh, that's not a real monetary system. Well, it is a real monetary system because they deal with loans, they deal with interest, they understand debt, they understand investment. There are certain individuals that there are certain kinds of shell that the values go up and down over time, and there are people who will buy them when they're cheap, secrete them in somewhere, and when they become valuable again, then they bring them out for the purposes of making a profit. So they understand all of these things. So it's a fully functioning economy, it's capitalistic, and they have money. But the money that is most valuable are these older shells, and these older shells are a very flat value. Everyone knows how much they're worth, and if you buy something from someone at a really good deal, at a later date, their family can come back to you and say, oh, you still owe us some money. You made a great deal with my father. You didn't make that great deal with me. Everybody knows that the thing you bought is worth more than you paid for it, so pay up. And you pay up or you return the item. One of the most common things that are used for borrowing is land, and land is, interestingly, in small plots, and I mean like 30 meters by 30 meters, like 900 square meters is a plot of land. And another most common thing to borrow money from a family member or someone else is bride price, because brides are purchased, and the more money a male has, the more wives he can purchase. And the author knew one man who had 10 of them, and had been contemplating purchasing an 11. Another interesting aspect of wealth in this is that accumulating wealth and sitting on it is viewed very negatively. Wealth is viewed as something you use to generate the ability to loan, to be a creditor, to give credit to others, often at a flat rate. You mean you don't get interest on most of the loans that you're making. And the reason you make those loans is that people who owe you money are under your political control. And this system, just like in America, the wealthy are in charge. The more wealth you have, the more political power you have. And the more wealth you have, the more likely you are going to be used as a source for making judicial decisions. People will come to you because you're powerful and you're wealthy to make calls about how to judge legal cases. And they have a functioning legal system, though this is a pre-literate society. And the most interesting aspect, if you are wealthy and you are stingy, if you accumulated your wealth and you've piled it up and you've kept it to yourself and you are not making loans, the Kapauku are very likely to have you executed. I'm not joking. And it's interesting that American wealthy people are upset that we want to tax them, whereas in the Kapauku society, if you're wealthy and you aren't using your capital in a constructive way and viewed favorably by the people around you, they will kill you. They do go to war. Warfare is conducted completely with ranged weapons, arrows, bows and arrows. They have no traditional hand weapons of any kind. Executions are done with bows. There is complete and utter prohibition in shooting women, to the point where women will run onto the battlefield to pick up the arrows to give them to their husbands or their brothers or fathers. Blazingly, they run into battle when there are arrows flying everywhere because they know no one is going to deliberately shoot them. It's quite fascinating. Now, on the downside, this is only a book in the loosest definition of that term. It is a bunch of pages that have been bound together into a publication because it is essentially a research paper. The author is not a great author. There is no narrative. He discusses individuals that you have no context. Boom, they just drop a name and he may give you a reference of why he's talking about this person. But there's no history in that person. There's no context of how this person fit into everything else in this particular chapter. Everything is very disjointed. And at the end of the book, it just kind of stops. There's no real conclusion. There's no wrap-up. The author didn't take time to bring all the converged pieces of information that he's been discussing into some kind of cohesive end. It was fascinating. It really was. The Kapauku are very interesting, and as a person that enjoys tabletop role-playing games, I would love to use the Kapauku Society because it would probably really flip people out when they realize that there's a capitalist group out there that is more hardcore than how we view capitalism in the modern world. So I recommend the information contained in this book. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. But the presentation lacked a lot. I'm serious, folks. This was not well done. It may have, among anthropologists, this may be considered a great work, but as a layperson, I thought the presentation lacked quite a bit. And he also uses quite a few terms that are very comfortable and familiar to anthropology students or professionals, but as a layperson, it's kind of like right over my head. I was able to figure out from context what they were talking about. But again, just kind of dropping things without any explanation of what they meant. So yeah, it was a good and entertaining piece of data and information. I enjoyed the fact that I now understand this society and their people to a certain extent. But wow, man, it was not presented all that well.